What is up, guys? This is Simon from Frozen Card Gaming, and this is going to be another series of commentated match replays featuring the Swordsoul deck in action. I'm going to be showcasing two matches today against the Stealth Kragen Turbo deck, which is an interesting water-based deck in the OCG, which we should be getting most of the cards of pretty soon, toward the beginning of October in Brothers of Legend. I don't think they're confirmed yet, but we're probably going to get them. So two matches. One's going to be against Darkman Alt, Herman Hansen, well-known EU player, I believe with E-Man Games. And then the second match is going to be against Halfness, who you saw in the Ableton replay. And I'm playing pure Swordsoul without the tennies this time to kind of just test different stuff out. And one thing I am trying out in this match, or in these two matches, is the Destiny Hero package. And so I'll go over that in kind of a brief deck profile at the end of this video. So yeah, let's just hop into the first game. This is going to be the first match. I went the dice roll. And I believe Herman was testing some changes to this deck, potentially for real life play. And so normally you would play Ready Fusion in this deck in addition to Instant Fusion, because Ready Fusion can summon out like a level 4 water extender. Basically half of your deck is water extenders. But because Ready Fusion was going to be a secret in TCG, I think he decided to test without them for the time being, because you don't want to shell out like $150 for a playset of Ready Fusions, and I can't say I blame him for that. So my opening hand is Gamma Driver, love to see him, Xiangjian, Taya, and an Ash Blossom. So this is not a good hand. I don't really have a play aside from just going Xiangjian and passing. And if I had Baroness, that would be nice, but I don't. So instead of Xiangjian pass, I decided to just kind of pass my turn, and that'll leave my Gamma live along with this Ash Blossom. And then he top decks another Ash Blossom for turn. His hand is 2 Ash, Instant Fusion, Impermanence, Gozen Match, and Silent Angler. And so again, this is just a water extender, and so because he has 2, he can just go ahead and do his plays. He's going to Instant Fusion for Rare Fish. This is the Ready Fusion target, by the way. And then summon Silent Angler. And then normally you can go for Bahamut Shark here, but Bahamut Shark will just get stopped by Gamma. And instead he goes for number 4 Stealth Kragen. So this is the hard soul of the deck. This is a card that the OCG got in Animation Chronicles, and so I believe we always get those in the Battles of Legend set for the current year. So we should be getting this in Brothers of Legend in October, most likely. It's a really sticky boss monster, so all face-up monsters on the field become water. That's the first effect, and this synergizes very well with Gozen Match. It's very similar to what the Zombie World deck does with Zombie World and Rivalry of Warlords, where once you summon a monster, it becomes water, and then you can't summon any more monsters unless they're water. So most decks are just shut out of the game by this. And then on top of that, it has a quick effect, non-targeting destruction during the main phase. So either player's turn, it destroys any water monster your opponent controls, which is all of your monsters because they become water. Then it has a burn effect. And then after it gets destroyed, it floats into these cards called Kragen spawns, which are just basically weaker versions of Stealth Kragen with a similar effect. And then the Kragen spawns float back into Stealth Kragen. So the card is really sticky, very hard to remove by destruction, and it does a lot of work. So the strategy of this deck is very simple. You just summon a bunch of waters, and you go either Bahamut Shark or Stealth Kragen, depending on which one is better in the current game state, and then you set on Gozen Match and you win the game. So gonna go Stealth Kragen, pokes me for 19, and then passes, and then or sets 2 and passes, and then I draw Fusion Destiny. So now I feel like I have to go in, so I go Xiangjian. He chains Gozen. Because this already activated, this is going to resolve as much as possible because I don't control a monster right now. So this summons itself and a token, and then they both immediately become water because of Kragen, so I don't have to send anything. And then I think he decides to pop here, because at this point he doesn't know if I'm playing tennies or not, and so he decides to just kill the token. I'm kind of locked out because there's nothing I can really do with this Xiangjian. So I just have to pass. I have no real play here. He's going to Desires. I'm going to Ash this. And then he's going to use Kragen to pop Xiangjian, burn me for 600, and then attack directly for another 19. And then my turn, I draw another Ash, so I have to just kind of Fusion Destiny here. So I activate it. He chains Ash Blossom, and then I chain Gamma. And I forfeit right after this because what's going to happen is the Gamma and the Driver are going to be summoned. They're going to become water instantly, and then the Fusion Destiny can't summon a water Destiny hero. And so this is going to not summon anything, and I'm just going to scoop here. So yeah, that's going to be the first game. I'm just talking about this in chat. Yeah, Gozen Match was a real problem. Xiangjian in general, or the Swordsoul deck in general, can't really deal with Gozen that well. We have Moye can summon a water token, And then you can make Dragite, which is like okay, but you don't out the Gozen, which is a problem. So your options are like Dragite and like White Aura Whale, and you just don't really do that much into Floodgates. So you really need to see side deck cards for that. So that was game 1. In game 2, my hand is a lot better. I have Moye, Taya, Sudden Shift, so pretty good, and then Prosperity and Fusion Destiny. So really solid hand for game 2. And then his hand is going to be Silent Angler, Tenyu Spirit, Shadana. This is just another level 4 water extender. It's not as good as the others because it's not a fish, and that's relevant for a card called White Mirror, which I think is going to be, it's like an import purgatory at the moment, so we're not really sure if we're going to get it or not. Silent Sea Nettle, this is also just an extender that also recycles stuff, and then this is probably in the same pack as Stealth Kragen. I think they're both Animation Chronicle cards, and so we should also be getting this in October most likely. Gozen Match, and then Token Collector. So Collector, I've mentioned before, is very, very good against this deck, no matter if it's Pure or Tenyi. It happens to be really good against Pure because it doesn't have the Tenyis to kind of play around this card. And then the Gozen Match is a problem as well. So, gonna see how this goes. I start off with a Prosp, and I think this was my first actual match testing this version with Prosperity. And so I only banished 3 here, but I think I'm supposed to go for 6 every time, so I tend to do that later on. I hit Duster, Talents, and Ecclesia, so this is an excellent Excavate. I choose to grab Talents here, I believe. And then I put the other 2 back. The reason you play Prosperity instead of Desires, by the way, is because you need your Garnets in deck for Fusion Destiny, and so you just can't afford to play Desires. So Prosperity is fine. It's not as good as Desires, but it's perfectly fine in this version. I try to go Moye, I get Token Collected, and normally I would just pass on nothing here, but I have both Talents and Fusion Destiny. So I peek at his hand, I take the Gozen Match out because it's the main thing threatening me. And then I activate Fusion Destiny. I send Dasher and Disc Commander, and then I summon Destroy Phoenix Enforcer. So if you missed the Dragon Link video that I just posted a couple days ago, this is the objective of this engine. It is kind of similar to Dragoon, where you just summon a fusion monster at the end of your turn. But there's a few minor differences in that Fusion Destiny here is able to just be played after you summon stuff, and so when you like get stopped on your starter, this is like a fallback plan. I mentioned how you can like sort of play around Token Collector, and the way you do it is by just having a secondary win condition that doesn't care about Collector. So I have interaction through the Collector at least, and this card is also very sticky, just like Kragen. It's similarly a non-targeting destruction, except this also destroys back row. And I don't remember if Kragen destroys back row, but it's really good, and then it comes back every turn. So that's going to be the idea. And this gives me at least a play through Collector, and so whereas I would have just passed on this plus Sudden Shift and then not had a long-term plan to deal with this in the pure build, I do have this for this match. Another option is I could have used Talents to take the Collector and then made an Xyz monster, but I wasn't playing Baguska or Zeus at this time, and so there's no Xyz monsters for me to make. And I could have also taken the Token Collector and then made Verte for this, but because they're hard open to Destiny, I decided I was fine just activating it and looking at the hand instead. And also looking at the hand with Talents also meant that I could, like, if he had Ash, for example, I could just take the Ash. And, yeah. So I pass on Destiny, pop the Collector, and itself, and then this activates in Graveyard to come back in the next standby, and then I set Sudden Shift, then I pass. So on his turn, he tries to go 2 Waters, and I believe I just flip Sudden Shift, and he knows he can't really play through this because I can just pop whatever else he has. So yeah, pretty uneventful game 2. Yeah, in chat here he was saying he probably could have just passed after the Sudden Shift, and then I don't really have a play besides like Phoenix Enforcer Beatdown, but I think that would have been sufficient for a while. And I think I would have eventually probably ran away with this game, so I think the engine itself is strong enough that it puts in work in those kind of simple game states where we can just pop a card every turn. So pretty boring games 1 and 2. Some of the games are going to be like that. This game 3, I guarantee, is much more of a clown fiesta, so we're going to jump into this one right away. My hand it's solid. Sudden Shift, Long Yuan, Lightning Storm, Dragon Sword, and Prosperity. So this is an okay hand. I would say pretty good because of the Storm, but Herman is going to have a very explosive opening here, and I'm going to need more than just a Storm to play through this. So he has Angler, Instant Fusion, Unexpected Die, Effect Failure, and Buzzsaw Shark. So Dai is just another water extender. You summon any level 4 fish you want. He chooses 7 colored fish because this is just a funny throwback card, but there's a ton of meme cards you can play, like WoW Warrior and Tongyo, so just tons of fun options. And then Buzzsaw Shark is really kind of the main playmaker of the deck in that sense. Like, a lot of the cards are just extenders, and then Buzzsaw Shark is the real, like, 2 bodies in 1 card. So it basically just gets a fish from deck with the same level as the monster you target, usually target itself, but a different name. And then it does Exceeds lock you. So you basically can just get a 1-card Kragen or a 1-card Toad off of this. So with this particular opening, because he has like 4+ water extenders, he can go into the double Bahamut Shark play, which is really strong. He's going to go Bahamut. This is the 4th summon. And then Toad, so this is the 5th summon. So this protects him from the rest of my hand traps or whatever that I don't have. He goes into another extender and then overlays into a 2nd Bahamut into Toad. And then he overlays his 2 Bahamut Sharks into F0. And then you top up Draco Future. So this is a newer card in King's Court that hasn't really gotten its time to shine in the spotlight, but it's a very strong effect. It doesn't really get destroyed by anything. And then it is a quick effect negate for monster effects, and then it also steals the monster. So really strong negation. This is also non-targeting removal. So really good card. And then he has a Veiler to back it all up. So that's going to be that. I draw Imperm, which is fantastic. And so now I have 2 breakers, and then I have other stuff. So my main strategy is going to be how can I break this board of essentially 2 Omni negates and a monster negate with only these cards. So there's a couple of choices here, and I believe I start with a Rhoda and then Prosperity to kind of bait out whatever he has. So I go Rhoda for the Taya, and then I have a couple options. So I lead with Xiangjian. So a couple things here. Draco Future here is very good against Phoenix Enforcer, like he says in the chat, because if I activate Phoenix Enforcer and then he takes it, then that is basically permanently stopping my resource loop, because Phoenix Enforcer has to die in order for it to come back. And so if he can just take it and then like link it off or something, that's really strong for him. Second of all, this only takes if the monster's in the field, and so if I activate a Xiangjian in hand and he negates it, this stays in hand because this doesn't destroy. So it's kind of I'm pressuring a Toad pretty much, because what this does is that if he allows me to summon a token, I can go straight into level 10, and then the level 10 is big enough to beat over either of these Toads. So essentially, he is kind of forced to negate the Xiangjian immediately, or else he just loses the negate for nothing. So he takes that, and I am confident doing this because I know he basically has to negate this, and so I know my Storm is still going to be live afterwards. And then here I make a really stupid misplay. I Prosperity first. I do 6 this time. So we mill 6, and I hit both Storm and Fusion Destiny, and I believe I take Fusion Destiny, which kind of telegraphs that I already have Storm. Which I'm okay with him doing, like, he can't really do anything about it. But I make a really stupid play. I decide to Imperm first on the Toad and then Storm. Because at the time I did not read Draco Future. I didn't realize that this was indestructible. So this play makes no sense if you know what Draco Future does. And I asked to go back, and then he very politely obliges. And because this is testing again, so you should be like, there's no logical reason to make that play when I just have the out to his board. So instead I Imperm the Draco Future, and then I Storm, and then he negates the Storm with his Toad. And that's the proper line of play. After this, I have Taya. I discarded the Sudden Shift with Xiangjian on purpose, because now I can banish this with Taya. And I had this in mind when I went for the Rhoda for Taya in the first place, is that now I can banish the Sudden Shift with the Taya, and then it gets me 2 tokens. And so this Veiler in hand is not doing that much. So he holds Veiler. And now I have 2 choices mainly. I can go into either Baxia to spin cards, or I can go into a Chixiao and get some utility out of that. And the nice part of the Chixiao is that even if he Veilers the Chixiao effect to search, the Chixiao is still on field for the next turn. And so it still gets value no matter what if he has the Veiler. Whereas if I go for Baxia and then he Veilers the Baxia, the card is kind of not doing anything for me for the rest of the turn. So those are my 2 options. I think I choose to go Baxia here because it is only specifically worse into Veiler. And I know he has my Storm, and I really want to get rid of this. So I decide to take the chance. I just go for Baxia, and then if this does resolve, I have the Moye dump, and then I can Baxia pop itself, revive the Moye, and then sync with my other token for a Xiao anyway. So it's like a lot more value, and I kill the Storm, and it only plays badly into Valor, which of course he has. So I get Valored here, I dump a Moya anyway, and then I have Fusion Destiny, which he knows I have because he saw me add this off the Prosperity. I send 2, I send Phoenix Enforcer, and then I go Battle Phase. So Phoenix Enforcer will kill the Long Gun that was stolen, and then I activate the effect in the Battle Phase. I pop the token and the Draco Future. I could have popped itself, but there's like minor cards that stop this, like Ghost Spell, DD Crow will stop this, and so this is also post side. So I can just pop the token because the token is not going to stick around anyway, and it's a little safer. So this dies because it was impermed, and then I attack directly with Basha for 23. And then I just pass, and I basically have to get Stormed here, so he's going to flip my Storm, and then my guys die. I activate the Phoenix Enforcer Engrave. If he has Bell or Crow at this point, then he just has it. And now he's in a bit of an awkward position because he is out of, I believe, Bahamut's. I think he only plays the 2. And then also, this will come back in the next standby without activating. So the way the Phoenix Enforcer works is actually really obnoxious, is that it activates immediately when it dies, and then it comes back without activating next turn. So if this activated during my next standby, he could just make a Toad and then negate it. But because it activates immediately, he basically can't stop it with Toad. So he chooses to go Kragen instead, and now this game is about to get very grindy. So I take 19, he comes back in standby, I draw Talents, which is not that great. And then I think I try to end main phase. So here's the thing about Kragen is that Kragen is main phase only, whereas Phoenix Enforcer is at any point. And so you can place a lot of pressure on this Kragen by just threatening to end main phase. And so basically, like, whoever activates first loses, because whoever gets the chain will resolve first. Which is nice for me because I can just go battle phase, and then he has to activate Kragen as I attempt to leave main phase. So he's going to activate, I'm going to chain Enforcer, and then going to try to destroy both Kragen and itself. He floats into these 2 Kragen spawns that I mentioned earlier, and then attaches materials to both. So yeah, so this card's really sticky. Because Stealth Kragen had 2 materials, he gets to get back 2 Kragen spawns from the extra. These cards are similar, but they don't have the same Floodgate effect that turns all my guys into water monsters. And then these 2, if they were summoned by Number Monster's effect, which Kragen is a number monster, if they die, you can revive other Kragen monsters up to the number of materials that this guy had. And so they basically bring back Stealth Kragen with 1 material. Fortunately, Kragen's float is only if it was Xyz summoned, so this doesn't just float infinitely, but it does give you a lot of bodies, and it can be very annoying to get rid of. We also have a conversation about how Disc Commander is potentially better than Celestial, or Celestial is potentially better than Disc Commander, which I think I do agree with after this game. Celestial is a level 4 that basically says you banish it and another hero if you have no hand, and then you can draw 2. So in like this situation, I could have just set Talents and then used Celestial to draw 2 cards, and it would have like come up a lot. The reason I tried Disc Commander at first is because in theory you can bring this back with like Basha, but after I want to say like 24 games, I don't think I've ever had that come up once. So I would definitely play Celestial instead of Disc Commander in this build. So I pass, and then my Enforcer comes back in standby. He still doesn't have much of a play because his Enforcer is very annoying. He shifts his guys to defense because these can't like destroy anything right now because my Enforcer is not water. I don't pop here because I don't want him to get Kragen back. I want to kind of control when he gets Kragen back, or I want to be in control of that rather. And I also have Talents, so if I can make him use a Kragen spawn in main phase, then the Talents becomes live. So I choose to go Ecclesia and he ashes, so that's annoying. And then I consider going for the Talents play here, but I don't recall. I think I should have just tried to draw 2 here. I think that would have been much better, but I think it slipped my mind, and I was trying to figure out ways I could steal his Kragen and then do stuff with it, but nothing came to mind. So instead I go battle, he gets back Kragen spawn. I think I decided to just hold this, even though in retrospect it's probably better to just draw here every time. And then I activate Enforcer to destroy in battle phase, because this is main only, so this is going to kill the Kragen. And then this doesn't come back anymore because this was not Xyz summoned, but this Kragen can still bring it back. So he draws another Ash. my Enforcer comes back again. So this game, like, Enforcer is putting in a lot of work against how grindy this card is. And this would have been like a game where if I hadn't had Enforcer, I would have been on 0 resources for like a lot of turns in a row. And the Kragen deck is really good in those situations where both decks run very few resources, because it's hard to come up with a way to answer this card on no resources. So he passes, and I go Enforcer again. He goes back into Kragen. And then I get Enforcer back. And then try to go Battle Phase, and he pops, I chain Enforcer, and then he decides to Valor my Enforcer, so I take burn damage. Not a big deal. Because this was still destroyed, it still comes back, so it like doesn't matter for me. And then my Moye is just not live because I don't have another card to show for it. So I take 1250 from Kragen, and then I try to Talentless to draw 2, but I do this 1 turn too late. He has another Ash for this, and so I'm just going to pass again. He draws White Mirror, my Enforcer comes back. And then he tries to activate the main phase, I chain Enforcer. And now I finally dealt with this Kragen. It's like just off the field. But at the same time, it's a little too late. And he now has also outed my Enforcer for this turn. And he's going to be able to come up with a way to permanently out the Enforcer. And it's going to be going White Mirror. This is, like I said, one of these cards that's kind of in import purgatory. We're not sure when we're going to get this. This was in the same set as Right Hand Shark, which is another cool shark support card that is OCG only, and it gives like battle protection to the card that it's material of. So he gets back Buzzsaw as another Buzzsaw, and then he summons Angler and goes into Chakanine and then Borbo. So this deck is easily capable of doing this as well. Chakanine is completely generic, and he's not waterlocked or anything. So he goes Borbo, Battle Phase, and then 4 material Zeus. And now this Zeus is a problem, because if Phoenix Enforcer doesn't destroy itself, it doesn't come back. So this answers the Enforcer very reliably. I draw another Talons for turn. I go into main. And then I have options. And so the first thing that comes to mind is I activate Enforcer, and then he Zeus's, and then this leaves the field. And the problem is he's still going to have 2 materials on this Zeus. And so one option I have is going the Zeus plus a normal summon Moye, and then just going to Battle Phase. Another is, like, I take it with Talents, and then go into Battle Phase. And then the second option is I go Talents and I draw 2 and I pray, because I still have to play through a 2 material Zeus, which is probably not happening off any 2 cards that I draw. And the problem with just taking the Zeus and having the Moge is that I have no way to get rid of the Zeus. So I would have to like link into a Verte, and then the Verte would be dead because I don't play a second Phoenix Enforcer, nor do I play materials for a second Enforcer. And so I would be passing on just Verte, which is just like awful. So instead I decide to pass and just pray that this card is sticky enough that he doesn't kill me. Which is probably a mistake. I think I just had to go for a Hail Mary here, because what's going to happen is I'm going to go end phase. He's going to Desires, and I know he has this Buzzsaw, so he has like at least a rank 4, and I'm only on 4850 right now. So he activates Zeus, I chain Enforcer, and then he chains Zeus again, and so because this doesn't destroy, I don't have a card I control, then this can't destroy a card in his field. So the Zeus survives, and now he only has to deal another 1850 points of damage to kill me, and I know he has Buzzsaw. So he summons Buzzsaw, or he White Mirrors back Buzzsaw, and then the game is over and I just forfeit. So yeah, I think some pretty poor uses of Talents from me this game. I think if I had tried to go for the draw 2 a turn earlier, this would have been a very different game. I think if I potentially played Zeus as well in the extra, or even like a generic link like Lina, this would have also been a different game. Because I could have gone like take Zeus, link to Lina, and then steal like Type of Future Dragon or something, which would have been cool. But yeah, I do like this engine in this deck. I think it's neat. And something I did forget, like basically every turn also, is that the main reason you play this card in this deck is for Ecclesia. Ecclesia says that if a fusion monster was sent to the graveyard during the end phase of this turn, you can add it back. And basically, since Enforcer is hitting the grave every turn, more or less, you get this back every turn. And because this is my first match with this deck, I completely forgot about this interaction, but this is such a powerful interaction, and it's one of the coolest reasons you play this deck. So I forgot that. It would have made a big difference, I think. And so apologies for some misplays on my part, but that's just part of learning the deck. I thought this was a cool match, or at least game 3 was a cool part of this match. And yeah, that is the Kragen deck in action. So let's go ahead to the second one. Heading straight to the second match here, Hafis is playing a slightly different build. He, I believe, is playing the Ready Fusions in the main deck, but testing without White Mirror. So kind of subbing out one Water Extender for another. Ready Fusion at the time, or on DB still, is called Retort Fusion, but this card is in Dawn of Majesty and is currently like $60 pre-order, so I can understand why you would want to test without this card. My opening hand is pretty straightforward. 2 Moyes, a Xiangjian, Sudden Shift, and Ash Blossom, and so I just go into the standard Moye play into Xiangjian. So I get both Qixia and Moye here, bread and butter. I draw Gamma, I add Dragon Sword, and then I think I Dragon Sword for Taya, or I try to at least, and then he Ashes, which is like totally fine for me because I already have the Xiangjian. So like, there's also not much else you can Ash in this deck, so I think this is like fine. It doesn't feel good to Ash this, but I mean, what are you gonna do? And I decide to just use Xiangjian, pitching the Moye, and then I go into a Xiangjian here. And I tend to do this game 1, and I think you probably do this if you can do it without like sacrificing too much engine, because adding the Xiangjian really makes it very irritating to break this board. Whereas, like, if you do just Sudden Shift plus Qixia, it can be, like, sometimes you get run over. It depends on the deck and the matchup, but I think going for this, game 1 at least, you don't get blown up by that much. I think Nib is the only big thing you're playing into, and so typically I would just probably tend to go for this game 1 in most matchups. And I get a little rewarded for it here, I believe, because he draws an Imperm for turn, and so if he has Imperm for the Qixia, it becomes very annoying. Because if he can get like 2 water monsters and then I Sudden Shift both and my Qixia is gone, and then he gets 2 more water extenders and he summons a Kragen, and then the Kragen becomes a huge problem for me that I suddenly am like on like very few cards and it's hard for me to out the Kragen. So he's going to Imperm anyway, I believe, on the Qixia, and then he's going to try to Shithana and then summons Buzzsaw. And I go Ash and then chain Sudden Shift, but this is just really bad on my part, and we talk about this in VC, because the way that Buzzsaw works is that it has to be able to reference a fish monster on the field, and you have to be able to reference both the name and the level of that monster, and so if it's removed from the field by the time it resolves, you don't need to like Ash or Imperm this, it'll just not resolve at all. So Sudden Shift by itself is sufficient here to clear this out. I target the Xiangjian and there's 2 monsters. And I banish the Moe to protect it, and then he sets Strike and passes. I draw Dragon Sword, very straightforward game. I'm just going to Dragon Sword, and I think he scoops after this. So, really, you know, kind of boring, and this triggers the Xiangjian, and so he's going to get rid of the Strike, and he can't even chain this because this doesn't die. So very straightforward game 1, not much to say about that one, honestly. And a lot of games are going to look like that, where, like, you know, the games are not just as like, close as you think they would be. But now the challenge is going to be game 2, where I have to go second into back row, and Happiness's build is a little more back row heavy than hand traps. We have Gozen, Strike, and Impermanence, so Gozen Strike is terrifying no matter what. And then Silent Angler and Beautiful Princess. So this card's role is to get Buzzsaw Shark, more or less. It basically has a trigger effect on summon, it banishes itself, and then it basically just grabs Buzzsaw, and that's its job. So you have 6 copies of Buzzsaw in this deck, and then you play Pots as well alongside it. And then my hand is pretty solid. I have the Rhoda, Moye, Taya, Tactics, and Fusion Destiny. And so seeing Tactics and Destiny in this hand is excellent, and so I'm hopeful of being able to do stuff. So he goes Beautiful Princess into Buzzsaw, and then Buzzsaw effect. I don't have a hand trap for this. And then he gets Angler. Goes into Kragen because he has no other water follow-up. If he did have a water follow-up, then he would be able to go into the double Toad into F0 play that I showcased in the last match. But Kragen plus Gozen is insanely strong by itself. So this is like, you feel pretty safe as the Kragen player here. So he's going to set 3. I draw Ecclesia, which is really, really good in this scenario. So I start with the Rhoda for Xiangjian, kind of seeing if there's an Ash or not, because he did Ash to Rhoda in the first game. And then I special Ecclesia, I use the effect here, trying to just see what he has, honestly. One thing to note is that Kragen chain to Ecclesia is a little annoying, or Kragen on summon, I guess, I guess he can't chain it to the Ecclesia if I use priority, because it won't be on field, and then he can't activate this if there's nothing on field. Oh, and yeah, it is monster only, so that's relevant from game 1. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to summon something off this, and he's going to have a response most likely. So I go Moye, I reveal the long gun that I added off the Rhoda, and then he chains Gozen. This is a water token already, so it's fine. Like, these are both waters. And he could Kragen here, like, preemptively, which might arguably be correct. Again, I remember from the first match that Herman wasn't sure if I was playing Tenyis. I think at this point, Halfmas is, like, he escaped too, so he knows that I'm on, like, the pure build. He didn't see a single Tenyi in game 1. So he just kind of waits for me to Synchro Summon, which I think is fine too. He could have popped potentially at the starter, but it's unclear. I go into Dragite, I get a draw off this, and he doesn't strike or anything, but he will just Kragen immediately on summon. And you can argue that it's maybe better to still hold the Kragen, because, like, Battle Phase is, like, a little nasty, I guess. But I am waterlocked currently, and there's, like, not a lot I can do when I'm waterlocked. So I think you could argue it's correct to hold this. On the other hand, the other annoying thing is that he doesn't know if I play Nibiru, and so if Dragite manages to hit a Nibiru, then that's also kind of bad. But the odds of that happening are also very low, and also the odds I side in Nibiru against this deck are also very low. So overall, I think, like, in a vacuum, I think keeping the Dragon on the field is a better play. But he does have Imperm Strike, and so he feels, like, decently safe no matter what. And so he does use Kragen on the Dragite. I take 15. And then I think yeah, this is a misplay. There's no reason to tie out there. I think for a while. Because my options are, like, Taya or, like, Longyan at this point. Or Fusion Destiny, and I end up going with Fusion Destiny. So this will lock me out of my remaining Sword Souls for the rest of the turn. But I do get to board Phoenix Enforcer. So this plays well into the strike, because he has to strike the effect to kind of, like, come back if he wants to stop the recursion. And then if I happen to hit the strike with this effect, then of course he can't do that. So I activate Enforcer, and if this gets into, like, a prolonged war with this Kragen, then we've seen from the first game that the Enforcer eventually wins. But the real fear here is what happens if I pop the Gozen, and then he doesn't have a Gozen for later. And so I think it's a little scary, right? Because you want to preserve this Gozen kind of at all costs. But if you leave this on the field, then, you know, this will try to pop the Gozen next turn. So there's, like, a lot of decisions you can make. I think he chooses to Imperm the Enforcer here. Even more so because I set a card. And so this telegraphs that I want to pop this card and not Enforcer itself. And so now, you know, if he knows this isn't dying, he's not going to get a chance to strike the effect to revive itself. So this puts even more pressure, because the fact that I set this Rhoda really telegraphs that, like, I want to keep this Enforcer on field no matter what. So he chains Imperm here, and then I activate Talents to take the Stealth Kragen. These are both water. This is all face-up monsters in the field, not just your opponent's field. So quite strong, and nothing goes to grave. And then I get to attack for 19 and attack for 25. Then May Phase 2, I have not that many options to get rid of this Kragen. The first option is to just Link Summon into a Verte, but I can't do that because of Gozen. Verte is dark, obviously, and so the only remaining option I have is to Tribute Set Longyan over the Stealth Kragen. And this will get rid of it, and this will also stop all of the floating. So now suddenly he's only on Gozen Strike and a Water Extender in hand, and I have Enforcer, which should come back every turn. So I'm in a great position, more or less off that Fusion Destiny, more or less alone, honestly. Like, the Talents did get rid of this, but we did see that this will eventually beat the Kragen. Yeah, though the Strike would have been annoying as well. I would have had to get rid of this eventually. But the Kragen doesn't, like, apply that much pressure to the Enforcer either. So he draws a Retort Fusion for turn, or a Ready Fusion rather. And he's going to go into another rank 4. Specials this. I have the option to Enforcer here. I don't remember if I do or not. Yeah, he goes into... I think he thinks for a while here. I think he decides to actually go into Bahamut Shark. So I think I hold Enforcer because I feel like there's nothing that really threatens me. I could have done it on one of the 4s, I suppose. Like if he had like Rare Fish plus Angler, I could have probably just done it, and in any case it would have forced out the strike, like no matter what, so not a big deal. And then keep in mind that this is going to activate immediately. So he's not going to be able to like Toad negate this when it comes, but like just like the first match, like this doesn't activate next standby. This activates right now, so this Toad can't stop this coming back. So I activate this effect. It gets striked, and then we complain about DB for a while because it's annoying to do stuff. Eventually, he gets the Toad out in the correct position, and he has a very smart play here where he just attacks the set Xiangjian with the Toad. It survives, and now the problem is the Toad is the Xiangjian is fire. So I'm not going to be able to summon anything next turn. I mean, he tries to go for Zeus as well, but he can't under his own Gozen. So this goes back. But the key play here is that this is face up now. And so my own Xiangjian has kind of screwed me out of this position. And now he's stopped the recursion from this Enforcer pretty nicely. So here I can choose to crash and then make a play. So I would have had to, for example, crash Xiangjian and then activate Storm. And then try to make a play after that, because he would have stolen my Storm. And then the problem is, like, I don't have a level 8 here that I can make under Gozen, because Dragite is already in the grave, and this is the only water synchro I play. I don't play White Aura Whale. So there was really no option for me here except to just pass. And just kind of hope I can draw more stuff. So I do road at the deck then a bit. The Gozen now is becoming a problem yet again. He draws another instant for turn, and then he's going to get another use of his Bahamut here. So this is a massive problem for me. He has 2 Toads now, and I have to basically work twice as hard to get rid of this stuff. Although I would have made life so much easier for myself if I didn't keep forgetting this Ecclesia effect. So again, I'm really sorry about this. This is really one of the main reasons you do play this engine in this deck, is to get infinite Ecclesias. And it just didn't occur to me in this early testing that I was supposed to be doing this. Like, I knew it was a thing, too. I don't really have an excuse for it. So yeah. My saving grace is that he can't attack over this, because Bahamut can't attack the same turn that it summons a Toad. But this is also the only thing stopping me from playing the game right now, so it's not really a saving grace, if you will. I draw a Duster. Duster's great, but he has 2 Toads, so still not going to do it. I still can't really afford to crash here. He draws a Veiler. And then he's going to finally use his turn to attack over. I think he was also debating internally about whether it was better to just keep waiting, because, like, again, I can't do anything. Eventually, I will have to crash this, and then by that point, he will have hopefully enough gas for another rank 4. And if you can summon, like, 2 Toads and a Kragen, you're, like, set. Like you win the game, basically. So he was debating for a while, but also if he attacks right now, it puts me on a 2-turn clock, because he'll do a 44 and then I'll be very low, and so I don't fault him for trying to do this here. And so he goes both Toads, still can't make Zeus, thankfully, because of Gozen, and then I top deck Gamma, which is probably one of the best cards I can top deck in this scenario, apart from, like, Imperm. So yeah, I just kind of go in here, I activate Duster, and if he chains the first Toad, I chain Gamma, he chains the second Toad. So this is fine. And then he takes the Duster, and then I think he can't actually take the Gamma, because there's something about special summoning monsters in face-down defense under Gozen, which doesn't work properly. It doesn't really matter very much, so he ends up not getting the Gamma here, and then I have Storm for the back row anyway. So basically Gamma was one of the perfect draws that really got me out of this scenario. Now I get to finish the game in style. I go Xiangjian, I pitch the Moye, and then I synchro for Xiangjian, and then Xiangjian deals 1200 points of damage for game. And yeah, really, I mean, it's also game through Veiler, so like it's just really nice. I definitely not the cleanest game for me, I would say. I think there may have been some better options for me, but I think both of these matches against Kragen would have been very difficult without the Phoenix Enforcer. The card really put in a lot of work in that matchup. And my experience has been, at least against Kragen in particular, I've struggled with the Tenny version as well. I think I have like a sub 30% win rate in that matchup. Just because Kragen itself is so strong, and then Gozen itself is very powerful, and if you can just keep the non-effect monsters off the field, then your Tennys aren't doing that much. But Enforcer really has just been like massively swinging my favor in these games. So yeah, that's basically it. I hope you enjoyed the showcase of Phoenix Enforcer in this deck, even though I didn't make that good use of it because of the Ecclesia recursion. Let's hop over to an example deck profile of what this would look like. This is going to be the deck profile section for what I'm calling the Phoenix Swordsoul deck, which I think is just a cool name, and I like the idea of Phoenix catching on as the name for decks that splash this engine, similar to how we call stuff like Dragoon Drytron now. I think it rolls off the tongue a little better than like D-Hero Swordsoul or whatever, so I'm going to try to start that trend in the TCG if possible. The build itself is pretty self-explanatory. You max in all the starters, you play 3 Rotas, you play 3 Ecclesia because this is pure, you need all the consistency you can get, and the interaction with Ecclesia kind of infinitely recycling itself with Enforcer, which I completely forgot to do in the matches today, but definitely a core reason you play this deck is for that interaction. As for pots, you play Prosperity over Desires because you are on these Garnets. You can't afford to banish these, so unless you want to play more Destiny Heroes, which does not seem like the move, you should be on Prosperity instead. It doesn't really make a huge impact. The biggest thing is losing the Moge draw. Prosperity is really nice for digging for cards. You can dig for Floodgates, you can dig for side cards, and if you can hit a Fusion Destiny off of your Prosperity, it feels really, really nice. The banishes are pretty easy too, because like these last like 6 cards are all kind of flex spots, and you can just banish them all if you don't need them for the matchup. You can banish the second Basha, and you can banish your instant fusion target if it becomes apparent that you like won't need it in that game. So you can typically get away with banishing 6 for Prosperity early on. It gets a little dicier if you play 2, or if you see 2 in the same game, but it could be worse. I'm trying out the 1 Spiritual Peak because I was looking for a 40th card, and this was a spell card, so it looked nice and clean. This could honestly be an upstart, even with Prosperity in here. It could be anything else, honestly. It could be another Hand Trap or your favorite tech card. I just chose to play this because of utility and just testing it out. Not much to explain. The Z-Hero package is over here. You play 3 Fusion Destiny because this card is really, really good to hard draw. It just adds this Enforcer onto your end board. And then you play these Garnets because you need 1 high-level Destiny hero, or one high-level hero in general, but Dasher is probably the best one. This has an effect where if it's in your grave and you draw a monster card during your draw phase, you can special summon the monster you just drew, which probably doesn't come up that much, but can definitely come up, and there's no other high-level hero that really does good stuff in grave. The only other one is Malicious. And the problem with Mali is that you have to play 2 Mali, and then you're like drawing into bricks a lot more. So I wouldn't play that in this deck particularly. So I think Dasher is a solid level 6. And then for the low level one, I talked about how Celestial is probably better than Disc Commander. Again, in about 1 or 2 dozen games with this deck, I never really had this scenario come up or ever wanted to revive Disc Commander. It should be noted that Phoenix Enforcer doesn't have to bring itself back. It can bring any Destiny hero back. And so the idea is that if you value the draw 2 from Disc Commander more than reviving Phoenix Enforcer, you can do that instead. And of course, you can also bring back Disc Commander with Bashia, but it just never came up for me. It was just never a thing that I wanted to do. And add that on to maybe 1 in 20 games, your opponent has Monster Reborn for your Disc Commander, and it's just Celestial's probably just the way to go. And then you play Hand Traps. These are not really necessary to explain. Gamma is really nice because you have these 9 cards here in the middle are prime Ash targets. And so you'll always have an empty field when using these, assuming it's the first thing you do. And so Gamma is really good there. And then Fusion Destiny itself is also a fantastic Ash bait. And so you can chain Gamma to it. Compare this to a Red S Fusion where... if you activate Red S Fusion, you're locked out of summoning for the turn, and so you can't chain Gamma to Ash on this. Thank God for that, honestly. But Fusion Destiny is more lenient, and so you can chain Gamma to this, and then you can get this to resolve just fine. So that's pretty much it. There's not much to explain in the extra deck here. These are all cards I've gone over in previous videos. The only one that I haven't being Verte, which is also easy to explain because this can dump Fusion Destiny. So in cases where you have just generic effect monsters that you don't know what to do with, you can talent a token collector, for example, and then go to effect monsters into Verte. It comes up and it wins you games that you basically have no right winning, and games that you probably wouldn't have won if you were on pure. So yeah, I think the only thing to discuss is, why would you play this build over Pure? And it's because I think Pure is comparatively a lot weaker in the TCG compared to the OCG. And that's for a lot of reasons. And I mean, the first most obvious one is Maxi, because Maxi is such a big part of their metagame. And the fact that you have to dedicate probably around a quarter of your deck to outs to Maxi. So you have like your own Max, you have Ash, and a Cross-out Designator. So that's a big part, is that the real hand traps that are in the main deck in the OCG are typically Ash Max, and then you don't see as many copies of other hand traps. Whereas you look in TCG and we have like decks maining like 3 Imperm, 3 Valor, and that's just like not nearly as common in the OCG. And so your starters will get interrupted less often in the OCG. And then moreover, when Max resolves, you can just give them 2 draws and still end on your Chi-Xiao Sudden Shift, which is a fantastic exchange for only 2 draws, and other combo decks are crippled a lot more by this. So this deck not only like it plays well into Maxi, and then the hand traps that OCG plays are not as good at stopping this deck comparatively. Whereas in TCG, you're going to get stopped a lot on your starters, and it's very painful. And so I found that Pure sometimes just like doesn't have the gas. Like I found that Pure sometimes will just like get hand trapped, and then the rest of your hand is either like more starters you can't use or like your own hand traps, and then you're like trying to top deck another starter the next turn. And the deck feels like maybe not flimsy, but like it runs out of resources surprisingly quickly compared to a deck like Tri Brigade, where it's just like, your interruptions get you more starters. So that's been my experience. I think adding the D Hero package is a cool way to circumvent that, because you are now giving yourself more stuff to do after your starter gets stopped. So I think it's a neat little option. I think this build is also really, really good in the mirror, because I found that the mirror tends to trade a lot of resources, and then both players end up like top decking surprisingly often, and that is really the scenario where Phoenix Enforcer shines. So I'd consider this. I think this and the Teddy version are probably the 2 strongest versions of this deck. Although I know that the Destiny Hero package is also very weak in certain matchups as well. So I think these are all things to consider. And Pure has been pretty underwhelming for me when I've tested it. It just doesn't feel like the extra generics are needed. But if a deck like Drytron is still around in October and you need to play that many hand traps, then Pure does have like valid reasons to be played if you can fit more generics, and all the other builds can. But yeah, that's it. This is going to be more or less it for this video. I don't know if I'm going to feature the Phoenix build again in another video. I think I have one more Flunder video planned, where I'm going to be playing the Tenny build against the Flunderies deck. And apart from that, I don't think I'll be doing as many videos after this. I've been going pretty ham on the content recently, and I'm going to take probably a step back and just like relax a little bit. There's some tournaments I want to play in, and so I'm going to prep for those. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, please leave some feedback in the comments, leave a like and subscribe, and stay tuned for probably at least one more feature match with this. Yeah, until then, thanks for watching. Peace.